Hi, this is Moira Murphy from Oryad, and you are listening to the Brutally Delicious Podcast.
One, two, three, four. The Brutally Delicious Podcast. The Brutally Delicious Podcast. The Brutally Delicious Podcast. The Brutally Delicious Podcast.
Virginia.
Wow.
Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
How are you guys? You doing okay?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're loud and
Yes.
clear, and we're good to go.
Great.
So thanks for joining me.
Hi.
I know we finally got it worked out, and that's great.
Yeah, this is great.
So before
Thanks
we
for having
even
us.
no problem. Before we even get started, though, how in the world did I not know about you guys? I had no clue until I got this from Sonia, and then I'm blown away by it.
Oh, thank you.
So that's my lead-in, because I've been listening to, especially Blood, with the video and everything. It's just so amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean that's the kind of reaction we want to get. Is yeah, where have you been this whole time? We've been here.
Yeah.
So for those not familiar, because obviously it's probably others just like me, can you give us the 2-sentence elevator pitch?
Sure. Oh man, Matt's gonna laugh because that's a challenge for me to be succinct.
I'll start a timer for you.
So the 2-minute pitch. Basically, we started in Denver as a pretty traditional symphonic metal band. And over time, we've kind of developed our sound and rolled in different influences that we all kind of have artistically and our different artistic pasts into this amalgamation of symphonic metal and doom metal and progressive metal elements, pure operatic elements, jazz elements, into this Oryad project that we really love sharing because we think it's very unique and because we have such a focus on both the lyrics and the voice and the instrumentation that we like to bring in.
I would say even the theme and the presentation of it as well.
Correct. Yes, totally. Yeah. Interdisciplinary art, at least for me, is really, really important, bringing in different mediums together instead of relying just on one, because people, they react to art differently. They imbibe art differently. And I feel like especially we're so splintered by social media, we're so splintered by the digital age, that being able to explore themes and explore art in different ways, different pathways is just, it's more enriching and it reaches more people.
Okay. So if we're going to stay along those lines, then is there something, it's super theatrical, I think super personal and all of that, introspective even, is there something you want your fans to take away from, like a message?
A message.
Or a takeaway, or anything like that.
Yeah. And Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I would say there's not necessarily a call to action, but there is definitely an exhortation to meditate more on your own place in the universe and your own thought of your life cycle, how your mortality relates to the greater world around you, because so much of the music comes from a place of grief, whether or not that is grief of losing people, things in your life, or grief of losing parts of yourself as you develop.
But heavy music, I think more than any other genre, is also quite cathartic, right?
Yes, very much so.
How much of yourselves do you put into these records? And has there ever been a point where you thought it was too much? Maybe I'm too vulnerable now, or I can't say that.
Oh, that's a good question. What do you think, Matt? I'm really curious as your opinion on this, to be honest.
I mean, I think for you it's a lot. I like this project really is so much of like it's like so much of your passion and like your personality. And like at sometimes it's like really difficult to not just feel like an accessory to that, because like no, and I mean that in like the best possible way, because like you literally pour your entire heart into this project. um like there's so many times where we're like working on something and we're collaborating, and you're going, oh, is this, am I doing too much? Am I being too personal? Am I like putting too much of myself on the table? And like, you know that dynamic that we have, even where it's like, yes, I think you are, or no, I think that this is a really good direction, like that's part of what makes what we have achieved up to this point what it is, and like has gotten us to this point. So I think for you in particular, like, like reading the lyrics and like hearing the emotion in the music that is coming out of you is really like emblematic of the version of yourself that you are willing to put out there. And I only hope to be able to do it justice, like through my own playing, and then like through my own on stage persona, I guess. And I think that that's kind of like the way that I relate to the music, and the way that I relate to the vulnerability and like the emotion that you were bringing to this art.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, what he said. Totally. Yeah, I'm still pretty much I'm not an open book type of person. So if there is a lot of emotion in the song, it's still filtered heavily through metaphor or heavily through myth, so I'm not being like, it's like, oh, this is about this person, or this is about this thing happening to me. It's
Right.
more of this amalgamation of these experiences, but it is extremely cathartic for me to be able to do that, and also to find, because I know a couple of times we've talked about, oh, there's a theme in the song, and all of us writing it could relate to it. And so I hope at least that for you guys it's cathartic too. Like for, we were talking about insomnia,
Right.
a slice of time, and insomnia and anxiety, and a lot of us when we were writing that song we're talking about those topics, right?
Right.
And being able to infuse that sort of feeling into it. So I feel that there are certain songs where I feel like it's more of a group emotion, and then definitely with the lyrics coming from me, that there is a lot of that in it. Coming from an operatic theatrical background, there's never too much,
Right.
but I still have my self-editing where I'm like, oh, versus, when you're learning expression and acting, a lot of master classes or acting classes, they'll tell you the minute you feel silly, you're just enough.
Right.
In terms of your
Interesting.
how you're putting yourself out there. But it doesn't mean it gets easier, especially if something's really close. There are specific songs, you mentioned Blood. Blood in particular does have some very, very sharp corners for me. And it was one of the first songs I started writing years ago when I decided to write music in this genre. So it is a big cathartic moment for me, and
Just getting it out there.
But it's nice because it's still very shrouded, it's still very what's the word? I can't think of the right word where I was going with this, but it's an example of a song that is very much like I was not afraid I was going too far
Right.
with it.
So what is this going to look like live? Because this has got to be super thematic, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested also to hear what Matt's opinion of this is, and if he thought I was insane the first time we did some of this stuff. So there is a lot of dance elements and ritual element to what we do live. And we were actually just talking like 10 minutes ago or something about our live set list for our little mini tour coming up in September. We put these like found sounds and poetry and briefly composed interstitials between songs, because I really want soundscape to be part of that. So instead of being like, here's a song about blah, 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 we play it, just letting it happen. And, it was actually Matt's idea to say, hey, do found sound. And so I found some cool things where people were like reciting these old poems and stuff like that, famous actors, and using that to create like a soundscape between each song, and to have dance be a big part of that. Look at me. I'm doing this with my a movement being a huge part of that. Because if we're hitting on the concept of ritual and hitting on the concept of music being a religious experience of some sort, you look back every tradition through, pre-written tradition, movement, music, and dance were inextricably connected in terms of having that experience. So I'm working on that set list now for the fall, and I'll be working on like new choreography. I probably have this is an interesting fun fact, I probably have a rotator cuff tear. I get an MRI tomorrow to find out, but this arm I can't really move. So I'm going to have to start thinking very creatively about how to kind of work around that.
Yeah.
On stage, because if it really is a tear, I mean, it's going to be many months until I can do anything. But that need to imbue that movement is definitely something that the songs called for it. It wasn't something I went to immediately. The songs just kind of happened. And I just don't, I'm really honestly curious, Matt, what you thought about that at first. Like,
do you mean like the dance that you're talking about?
All of the dance and kind of making sure that the songs fit together in terms of like a ritual with a soundscape instead of just like a set list.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so like, my thought is kind of like less about the dance thing, but more just like, I love this idea of like when you go to see a performance, like live music, and it's like very intentionally thought out, and like, I don't know, like you can appreciate live music for all kinds of different reasons. And like, I've been to plenty of shows where it's just like, the band's playing one song after another and they like don't do any theatrical stuff. And like that has power in and of itself that I appreciate. I just think like in regards to this project and like, the creative vision that we have set out before us, I think that it's really crucial to have some sort of like, an element that kind of connects things where it's like, you are not just seeing a band play a bunch of songs, but you are truly like seeing a cohesive, unit of sound and like visuals and stuff like
well
that.
Thought out.
Yeah, and that was kind of the whole point is like, I think that this music is it's like spooky and it's creepy and it's very emotional, and I think that it really serves that to have something, in the moments where the guitars aren't firing or like, we're not actually like blasting through a song, where it's like it continues to keep the mood elevated or like to even further escalate like whatever feelings we're trying to elicit from our audience. Like apart from the sounds that are on the record that are actually broody and haunting and creepy, there's other stuff that we have kind of like in our sample library that also can hopefully drive feelings of like uneasiness or like fear or just like a certain like sense of introspection from the people who are listening that are like, oh, like they are creating a vibe, to use the parlance of our times, and and like everything is connected and everything is very just like targeted at a certain emotional response.
Fair enough. All right. So the biggest question I think I have is, you said you've been working on this for quite a while, many years. And you're clearly not in the same geographic location. How did this come about?
Okay, so let's see, Reader's Digest version of this. So I was living in Denver and trying to do both the opera thing and the jazz thing. And the thing about the opera world is it's extremely expensive. There are age limitations to even get to certain opportunities where you're going to be heard, to get to the next step, to get an agent. It's very it excludes a lot of people, especially if you start a little later in life, getting your degrees like I did. And it was just really discouraging, and I wasn't really enjoying any of it anymore. And I was getting to that 30 age limit, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I got turned on to really traditional symphonic metal. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I've never heard anything like this before. And I went down a rabbit hole and I was like, I want to do something like that, but I just want to arrange classical pieces for metal band, which is what Inflammatus was on the EP. And so I was at a party with some opera singers one day, and the girl's boyfriend had gone to school with like Luca and Matt and a whole bunch of people I knew, and people I had done this like weird party gig for, where it was like top 40 songs and jazz songs, and I was singing like Eye of the Tiger and stuff like that, and said, hey, if you want to do this project, you need to talk to this guy Luca, who's into that stuff, and he's a guitarist. And we started getting together in like 2017, and I didn't know what I was doing because I come from such a different world, a very, very regimented, very academic world. So like the concept of writing songs, it was a big learning experience, you know, and Luca and I wrote a whole bunch of stuff. We had some other people. We were doing some like shows, some small shows in Denver. And then as it grew, we realized that we were going a different direction from the drummer we had. So we brought on Matt, because I knew Matt from what would you call Hallie's band? Like an alt singer-songwriter folk rock country band?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so,
it was singer-songwriter, acoustic guitar, but you know, like some electronic stuff and like kind of poppy.
Yeah. So he was playing drums in that band and I was doing backing vocals. So that's how I knew him. And I said, hey, you want to do this thing? I know you like heavier music. We talked him into it. And so we did some shows in Denver, and then we were thinking about tracking recording, and then COVID hit. And COVID kind of, you know, brought a lot of things to a halt, but for us, it inspired us to finish the EP. And then once the EP was done and everything was back in person again, we got together and we were writing new songs, and we realized that we weren't really doing traditional symphonic metal anymore. And so, so we had a lot of fun writing, and we were getting ready to do shows, and some stuff happened with my family. And so I moved back to Tennessee, where I'm originally from. And, but to me, I was like, this project, number one, is like my entire life, takes up every free second of my time. But also the fact was like, when I released the EP, we met people all over the world online. And those were the people who were interested, not the people that were necessarily in a local scene. And so I really dug in hard to try to encourage and engage an online community of like-minded people and say, hey, let's record this other set of songs. Let's make a full album because we've got it. Why not? Right. And it's been a really, really rewarding experience. And it also feels like then when we can get together and do these live shows, it's a special experience,
right?
You know, and we get to curate it. We get to pick what we want to do, and we have the recorded material, you know, behind us. You have something to sell, right? You know, all the marketing behind it. But one is not exclusive of the other, right? So we just basically did everything backwards. Instead of doing like, oh, we're going to do a ton of local shows for a long time and then do a recording. We did a recording. Now we're booking and things like that. And I come back to Denver every once in a while because I still do some classical gigs. So I'm able to line up if like, oh, I need to be singing with this orchestra this week. I'm going to come the week before that. And we're going to do either a bunch of music videos, we're going to book a show, right? And so if I go back to town like 3 or 4 times, that's how we've gotten together to be able to do some stuff for now. And as we grow with this album and everything, we'll just kind of see where it goes from here. But it's been a process that's worked pretty well. I mean, post-COVID, I think a lot of doors have opened where people have realized there's a lot that you can do digitally. There's a lot you can do online. There's a lot you can do with a home studio.
I think that COVID sort of, and you may disagree, leveled the playing field as far as artists go across the board, because everybody's got to come out of the box from scratch again, right?
Yes and no, I would say. I think it opened a lot of people's eyes to the possibilities of what they could do who had not thought about it before. But I still think there is still a lot of stratification in the industry. That's very, very entrenched. And even though it's changing, the systems of power are just changing names and changing hands, you know. But when it comes to the opportunity to record something or to have an online show or to have a live YouTube session, all of that stuff, I think, is definitely becoming more democratized. I feel right now, and this is an ongoing conversation of online platforms and the way in which they are sharing and disseminating things are now becoming a little less equal.
Right.
Over the last 6 months, I've noticed there have been a lot of changes, a lot of things that moving people towards monetization or demonetization
Yes.
when it should just be about exploring music. It's harder for people to find people.
Right.
And that's a conversation for another day. And it's
Right.
something I'm kind of mired in right now, especially with all the Reddit drama. You know, if you follow the Reddit drama, people in music communities are leaving Reddit now in droves. What's next? You know, but I think at the end of the day, the fact that we can have those conversations and have the choice,
Right.
that very much is a level playing field.
Fair enough. So I'm going to go back to songwriting for a second, and then I'm coming to a close. But when you're writing, this is so that we're talking about the thematicness of it, whatever that word is. Are you writing songs for the song's sake? Or are you writing songs how they're going to come across on stage? Like this is a good part for some of that intergenre discipline.
No, it'd be the former. I mean, it starts with the poem before anything else.
Okay.
So the poem is the theme, it's the mood, it's the story, whatever it is. And then after the poem, usually, I mean, not always, a melody of some sort. And then we talk about it and we're like, okay, what's the mood of this? What does it sound like? And whatever kind of comes out from that, you know. That means maybe it's more traditionally symphonic metal, maybe it's really sludgy.
Oh, you don't
maybe
even
it's
go
just,
into
you
it with
know,
you don't even go into it with a sort of bend in it, you know, genre bend. Like I'm gonna start writing metal, or I'm gonna start writing. You just go into it and see what happens.
yeah, basically let the shape of the melody
Yeah. I would say
or the rhythm.
like sometimes like we have particular goals, like you know, we want to make this sound like X, Y, and Z, but that's not really a conversation that we have very often. It's more like, yeah, I would agree that like the melody and the mood kind of dictate things more than anything else. And what you just said about kind of like, you know, the poetry and like the thematic elements of it, I'm trying to like lean on my music history education right now, and I'm not remembering the word, but there was like a classical composition technique where it's like, and if you can remember what I'm talking about, please jump in and make me sound like not an idiot. But there's like a technique where you literally you know, you write using the mood of something to like convey an emotion. Do you remember
Oh,
this?
tone poems,
Tone poem. Yeah, exactly.
which
Yeah.
is Strauss,
Yeah,
and I'm
that was
obsessed
it.
with Strauss. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, it really kind of rung that bell for me that like
Mhm.
we're writing metal tone poems basically
Yes.
a lot of the time, you know?
Right.
And hopefully other classical music nerds like hear that and latch on and understand what, you know, like what's going on here.
I was a
Totally.
kid, and I went into a deeper dive after I listened to Blood. And like I said, I didn't know where you've been. I kind of love the mixture of the symphonic and the heavy and the opera and that sort of thing, for sure.
Hey,
I
yeah.
don't know when I'm ever going to get to see you on this side of town. I don't know if you're on this run coming to the East Coast, but I
Yeah.
definitely would like to check it out one day because I imagine it's super thematic.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
said.
It's one of those things where, you know, since I have an orchestral gig, we're doing some stuff out in Colorado
Right.
for now, and just kind of seeing how that run goes. And then if I can convince everyone else out to move near me,
Right.
then so yeah, it's a 2024 conversation, I think, for
Yeah. It's not
to
a
do
hard no
something.
though. We definitely want to get out there and, you know, and play out on
Yeah.
the East Coast somehow.
Yeah. I've been thinking through some options because I have some contacts, like like-minded folks that are along the eastern seaboard, either in Appalachia or farther north,
Right.
that I think we would jive well with, or I've talked with them and we just like get along aesthetically and artistically, you
Right.
know. So hopefully, because yeah, the very theatrical thematic part of it is really important, and it's a big part, and it's fun.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know.
It's very fun.
Yeah.
I think you touched, I know I said we got to get going here, but I think you touched on something else. The metal community is unlike any other community, I think, in the world, because you just talked about it. They'll help you along the way, and you meet people at shows that You know, they're like brothers. You look forward to seeing them show after show or festival after festival. It's crazy.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, they're just such good people. And that's what I have to say of like all the genres I've been in or worked in, which has been many, they're just the most open-minded, like helpful, wonderful, interesting, multivariate people. You know, when you find out what they do or what they're studying, it's fascinating, you know, and you just become friends with them. It's like I'm supposed to be going on a hike soon with someone I met who lives in South Carolina, you know, and we're going to meet halfway and go on a hike, you know. It's like awesome to be able to meet people in the community like that. And I think it's really, really special. And I think people latch on so much to the gatekeepers, but I think they're the minority. I think they're just a very loud minority when it comes to the whole scene.
Yeah, I agree. Matt, you have anything else?
What about you, Matt?
I just, you know, I like being around this genre and like playing this music for the last couple of years. Like, you know, I've done a lot of different playing and like bouncing around in different musical worlds, and I would definitely agree when, you know, we talk about this community and how metal musicians are so welcoming and so eager to like lift each other up, and it just especially in like the small band scene. I mean, I've been around Denver like grinding in the metal scene, just playing, you know, playing to empty rooms and playing like bar gigs, and you know, like people show up, people support you even if you're playing to 5 people or 50 people or 150 people. Like there's always people that, you know, they want to hang out, they want to buy you a beer, they want to talk, they want to know where you're playing next. And like we're really lucky to have that. We're really lucky to be able to have that avenue to be able to like continue snowballing this thing and continue doing the work. And just like it's exciting, it's just exciting to think about where it could lead.
Yeah, totally.
So we're lucky.
Yeah, it's very wholesome, I would say. And that's what's so funny is people don't realize just how wholesome I think the metal world is.
Yeah, and it's right, because you have that total absolute reverse image in your head.
Yeah, and I think, you know,
most people, right.
And there was a study that came out recently that said that people who listen to metal tend to be more emotionally stable because they use it as a catharsis in order to navigate their world, which makes total sense.
Right.
You know, if you're listening to this, you're listening to heavy music, so you understand, right? And people who are outside that probably don't understand what that does. You know, I was gonna say our youngest fan is 7 years old.
Really?
She loves it.
Is one of your shows then? It's got to be multi-generational then? You've got.
Oh well, no. This is a girl. Well, she lives out here in Appalachia, and her mom sends me these videos of her like singing along in the car,
that's great.
like learning the words. It's It's the cutest thing. And she like watches the YouTube videos, and she's like, "Oh, it's just so cool." And like, you don't find it scary? She's like, "No." Yeah, it's adorable.
That's great.
So it's wholesome and it's open-minded, and it's like people, you know, get that. They get that sort of catharsis, you know, from it. Which
I'll testify to that for sure.
Yeah, totally.
So if fans want to find you guys, can you give us all your socials?
Yes. Facebook and Instagram, it's Oryad Band. So ORYAD Band. And that's the same for YouTube as well. So those are the big 3. Our website is oryad.band. And we have a lot of stuff on there too.
Awesome. I encourage everyone to maybe just use Blood as the entry point, because that's what got me sucked in. So I encourage you to go out and listen to it. Totally. You'll dig it. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you so
much.
Good luck with the music, because I really dig it.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Be well. Cheers.
Bye.